Do you like when I put little comments there?
Definitely. But I think I've got to get off the camera. Sorry. Hi, everyone.
Okay, bye.
I think I'm on. Hard to tell. Anyway, it is September 28th, and hello, this is Vicki Kirsch, commonly known as Miss Vicki at stargardenparenting.com. And this is my parent evening night, and hopefully I have some parents out there listening and ready to talk to me. But I do like you to wait till the end just so all the thoughts get out there, and then we can dialogue. So it's September 18th, 2018, and the topic is nutrition, health, and illness. And today I will speak about the microbiome diversity, and the second part will be about the purpose of the microbiomes. And the third part will be about toxins and avoiding toxins. So, hi Jeannie. Anyway, I was inspired to do this because I really would like to help all of us. Digestion is a very hard thing these days, and so many people have sensitivities and allergies and chronic illnesses and your compromised immune system. So it is very helpful to understand how your digestion, how nutrition works. And also the reason I wanted to share this is because I really believe if children are healthy, they're much happier and easier to parent. And that's part of the reason I feed everybody at Star Garden, so you'll be happier and healthier, and we'll all have a better time, which we really did have today, a great time. So to begin with, I'm going to read this verse, and those of you in the group have a copy of the verse, at least if you got the bookwork out or the paperwork out of your boxes. And that verse is, "May my soul bloom in love for all existence" by Rudolf Steiner. Now you see at the bottom of that page 4 YouTube sites. They are doctors that I follow because there's a lot of research going on now about digestion and nutrition and health. And these fellows follow it really closely and have very good understandable information. So I am referring them to you. Those in the group know it's Dr. Josh Axe YouTube, Dr. John Bergman YouTube, Dr. Eric Berg YouTube, and Dr. John Douillard, who lives in this area, has Life Spa, and he's over in Gun Barrel, but he does great YouTube presentations. So I highly encourage you, if you have any health issues or questions about your health or nutrition, check into these fellows. They're really, really good. So to begin with, I'm going to bring up this chart, which hopefully you have in person. And I don't know how it's going to look on the camera, but we're going to try and see how it is. So you know how I like to have visual aids because most of us really are helped a lot by visual aids. And at the top of this, you can see it's called the threefold human being. And that is a very big way, a very common way of understanding the human being from the Waldorf perspective. So if you look over here, over here, there's thinking, feeling, and willing. And I always start at the bottom because that's where all the children are. And that is, they are in their metabolic, digestive, and reproductive development years. And well, in terms of their soul, they're in willing. In terms of their physical development, they're up here in the upper region, which is the nerve sense system. And in case you can't tell by this funny little diagram, it is what's called a lemniscate or a figure 8. And what that indicates, this is Steiner teaching this 100 years ago almost, that the digestion and metabolic and reproductive system are connected to the nerve sense or the brain. And that is what modern science is proving over and over again. They call it the second gut. The brain, the gut they call the second brain. And so that's a little bit of what we'll talk about tonight. And I don't think I need to go into the chart anymore, other than I wanted you to see that they're very connected. And so, moving along, when I said that verse about love for all existence, what that reminded me of is what they've discovered scientifically. And I love that all these ancient pathways, part of this you'll hear from me is the wisdom of Ayurveda, the wisdom of the Asians, and the wisdom of what Steiner brought forward, which is very old. He took it from very old times, that they all knew what modern science is now proving, and I just find that so amazing. Anyway, one of the things they are really looking at, and I want you to hold as a prime thought when you think about nutrition, they call it epigenetics. And what that means is that what you think and what you feel, how you act, affects your genetics. For a long time, we've been told, oh, that's a genetic disorder. Oh, that's a genetic disease. And it's not so. It's really not so. It is so if you believe it is so and if you feel it is so. But if you don't, you can change your DNA purely by your thoughts and purely by your feeling. Meditation and contemplation help a lot to change your DNA, as does breathing, which is connected to all that. So I just find that a most hopeful thing is we all have health challenges that we want to improve and be healed of. So if you think about the metabolic system down here in the lower part of the human being, and you think about it as a second brain, and what they have discovered is that there's microbial action, which some people call it microbiome and others call it flora. Basically, it's just invisible organisms at work. And those invisible organisms help us to digest and absorb carbs. They help us to produce vitamins. They help us to eliminate toxins and absorb minerals. They help us to distinguish between pathogens or disease and harmless antigens, which fight the pathogens. And they help keep the harmful bacteria under control. They aid in the production of the antibodies that fight off illness and disease, and they thus providing support to the immune system. Now, an interesting thing that is brought up in these ancient teachings is that this microbiome is not only in your gut, it's in every body orifice that you have. So your ears, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your other openings, and your skin. And the most interesting thing that John Douillard shared is that on your skin, there's all these microbiome that when you leave it long enough to be healthy and prosperous, so therefore that means you're not washing it all the time, and especially not washing it with unhealthy body products, but allowing this microbiome to thrive, that it creates these little microbiome that have perceptions in the world, and they give us intuitions about what's going on around us. So the other thing to know about the microbiome, that it originates in the soil and in the air. And yeah, so I think a very, important thing to know is that all this propaganda that we have received about being afraid of bacteria and virus is very harmful to us. That will make us sick, not the bacteria and the virus. The body needs to be in a state of balance in order to fight off the unhealthy bacteria and the unhealthy, and not to produce the viruses. Dr. Nkeo has a very wonderful paper, maybe sometime I'll share with you, about how our body creates viruses. Anyway, these bacteria and viruses are a main part of us, and the propaganda mainly, I believe, has come from the pharmaceutical industry, because they want us to be afraid, and they want us to go out to doctors and to go out and spend money on these medicines that are actually harmful to the microbiome. So it's really important to know not to be afraid, and they've done the research where they know that children on farms are more healthy than children in the city because they're exposed to manure in the soil. And the other thing that they have proved in science, and that was proved at CU in the last probably 2 or 3 years ago, that there is a thin film of poop everywhere in the world. Now think about it. Ant poop, bee poop, and bees do poop, by the way, and bird poop, etc., etc., etc. And so that is not unhealthy. It's part of the healthy microbiome of the world. And so when you're worried about illness, take care of your digestive system. Don't worry about what's around you. So anyway, the thing to know is that 80% of your immune system is in your gut, and that the bacteria outnumber your own cells 10-1. That is 100 trillion bacteria, 2 to 3 pounds, live in your body all the time. How's that? Welcome them in, but tell them you're going to keep them in balance by your healthy life practice, basically. So anyway, you should have around 85% supposed good bacteria and 15% of those that are not so good. And the bacteria actually are very helpful. For one thing, as Dr. Nkeo points out, they break down the unhealthy toxins in your body. Fever helps in that process. And that it discards the toxins. The bacteria helps to move it out. In fact, bacteria produce nutrients for your body, such as vitamin B. And vitamin B is used up as you get the toxins out of your body. So viruses are even more active in your body. Viruses are, there are beneficial viruses that outnumber bacteria 10-1. That is 4 quadrillion viruses live in your body. Stop being afraid of those viruses. Just throw it out. It's a wrong concept taught to us by modern education, and it's wrong. So the Nobel Prize winner from the Center for Cancer Research says, we humans are well over 50% viral. That's who we are as beings. So some of the most recent research shows that it is the microbiome that determines what we're going to eat. And it's, is it the chicken or the egg? So here's an example. When you're a really carb heavy eater, the carbs feed the microbiome, and then the microbiome inform you, need some more carbs, get me some more carbs. And people get into loops like that based on what the microbiome are telling you, because the gut is communicating to the brain, and the brain says, hungry, ooh, you do need some more carbs. And obviously carbs are one of the most out of balance things in our world these days. And another really interesting thought I had about that is that our microbiome, I believe, is very connected to our ancestral lineage, because if you think of the fact that the egg that produced you was in your mother, and your mother was in your grandmother, what your grandmother was eating affected her microbiome, thus affecting your mother's microbiome, thus affecting your microbiome. So, ancestral patterns get lined up that way, and that's pretty obvious if you think you eat like your relatives and your the people that you're close to, your national ID type thing. So I think that's quite an interesting thought. Now, a good thing to know about microbiome, just like a farm, just like the whole of Earth, is that diversity is important. And if you think of a farm, how they're having problems with farming now because they grow all one crop 10 years in a row, and then they wonder why that crop gets diseased and dies. Well, it's the same thing with your body. If you're only eating one variety of food, mainly carbs, you're setting yourself up for an imbalance that your body can't fight off, because it doesn't have the diversity to handle the toxins and imbalances. So a couple of things, and I spoke about it last Tuesday when I spoke about cooking. So if you go back and watch that a little bit, those of you just joined, I did speak a bit about why I cook the way I cook and how it is set up to support your nutrition. But a good thing to know is seasonal eating, because something that happens in the earth, and if you're a gardener, it's easy to see. I don't know about in other parts of the world, but I do know here, if you get into the soil in the spring, it is so alive. It is the most amazing soil in the world. It's like, whoa, this is so filled with life. And that's what's happening in your body at the same time. You get into the summertime when it's hot and the sun and all of that, and you get into the soil and it's like, what in the world happened to this soil, right? And so in the summer, then you move into the more easily digested foods to digest, like melons and tomatoes and cherries and fruits and so on, that are also very cleansing, also filled with lots of liquid, lots of moisture to cleanse you out. But as you go through that seasonal shift in microbiome, your body needs to be eating what's of the season. It's and you are changing whether or not you're eating what's of the season because of what's around you. And so eating seasonally is very, very helpful. And eating locally is very helpful too. And in Ayurveda, they believe that the food you buy, that it's best if you buy it, if you're buying it, if you're not growing it. If you can grow it, that's good. But of course, we can't grow everything, and nor do we want to. We want to be part of the world. But nonetheless, if you buy it from someone you know, what you can know is that when that food is when the food is planted, when the food is cared for, when the food is harvested, the person's microbiome gets connected to the plants, to the vegetables and the fruits. So you're also eating other people's microbiome. So you want to mindfully choose your food that's grown by the healthiest people you can find if you want to be healthy. And it's, as I said in the talk the other night, it's also not healthy by just what they put in the soil and so on. It's healthy because of the love they have for what they do, and for the love of the plants, for the love of the earth, for the love of people. Has a very strong effect on plants. And one of these days when I talk about the elementals, I'll share with you why that is. But what my point is, eat locally. And then find the people that grow on the most healthy soil you can find. And by the way, Angeline, I did hear that the most healthy food is grown on volcanic soil. Yay! And I can well imagine why. And when I go into nutritional deficiencies, the volcanic soil does not have those nutritional deficiencies. For one thing, it's young soil. So anyway, and then another thing to know about this eating with diversity is what the Asians call 5 tastes: sour, bitter, sweet, salty, and umami, which means kind of meat taste. And they say that each taste feeds a different organ. But you can well imagine what kind of diversity that creates. And so your goal with your children is for them to eat diversely. Obviously not from the beginning. From the beginning, you introduce foods one at a time, making sure they don't have allergies, that they can digest it, that it suits them, and so on and so forth. But your aim is to get them to eat diversely and to be able to eat a lot of different food. And I'll go into that a little more, why that is, in a bit. But anyway, it all has to do with diversity. Now, another really helpful thing to know about digestion and nutrition is about fiber. And Patrick and I just learned this recently. It's fascinating. And I've always known fiber's really important for you. And fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans have a lot of fibers. Well, there's soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. So when you eat the fiber, The insoluble fiber lines your intestine and creates this kind of fabric to help keep the food in your intestines long enough that you can digest it thoroughly. And then the insoluble fiber helps in that. It fills in the little spaces between this kind of fabric, interwoven thing that the fiber does. And so one of the big problems we have with digestion these days is leaky gut. And part of it is the microbiome, part of it is the lack of fibers, because processed foods have no fibers. They took it out. It's gone when they take that wheat and take the stuff out off the outside of it, and so on and so forth. They've taken the fiber away. And thus it leaves your intestines with little openings, and the food can pass straight into your bloodstream undigested. And then you have food sensitivities or food allergies, depending on how, a lot of things, how that will manifest. But if you have food insensitivities or allergies, that's signaling you that you need to work on building up the microbiome, on building this web that protects your intestines and feeding it correctly. Now, the other thing about the insoluble fiber is it's what's called an insoluble, it's what's called a prebiotic. Oatmeal is a really good example. You take it in and it feeds all the microbiome. The microbiome has to eat. In a way, you're feeding that as well as the rest of your body, but it needs to be fed, and so the insoluble fiber does that. And good sources of that besides oatmeal, I know artichokes are, and I can't remember the other. I'll be handing out lists after lists, so maybe we can post them online for you, but you want to have plenty of insoluble fibers. And and then the thing that Steiner said about eating a varied diet is that, and being able to digest it completely. He said, for instance, you take a carrot and your body works on that carrot and it turns carrot into you. When it doesn't turn the carrot into you, your body will reject it. But that you want to take in a variety of things, because then you're taking the world in and you will have a greater relationship and a greater understanding, a greater connection to the world around you by eating diversely. So there's many reasons to eat diversely, and that's one of them. And then the other thing that happens when you do have allergies, food sensitivities, is that it weakens your immune system. And what that says is that inflammation gets out of hand. Inflammation is not a bad thing. One needs inflammation. If something comes into your body that it shouldn't be, or if a virus grows and is too much out of balance, then inflammation, as I said before, Dr. Nkeo spoke about this in a beautiful way, how it goes in and it dissolves it and it rejects it. So that's what inflammation and fever is, a sign that your body is cleansing you and helping you come back to a state of health and balance. It's about balance. It's not about getting rid of symptoms. It's not about getting rid of disease. It's about maintaining balance. So when the inflammation becomes chronic is when it becomes not helpful, when illness follows, and then you have to do things to help that. There's plenty of anti-inflammatory foods, and I'll go into that in a little bit. And I also spoke about that a bit the other night when I spoke about the foods that boost your digestion. That's what they're doing. They're boosting the firepower. They're boosting the ability to digest, to take down the inflammation. So it's a state of balance, The inflammation is here, ready to do its job anytime. But if it comes up here, then you have to do these things to bring it back into balance. And hopefully we get to talk a little bit about what that will be. Stress is the worst cause of inflammation, by the way. And I just hope we can all learn to live in a less stressful fashion. It's such a stressful time. And sugar and processed food causes your body stress. And it also causes chronic inflammation. And sugar, that is not all sugars, but probably all sugars out of balance if you're eating all honey or all maple syrup or whatever. But white sugar, processed sugar, feeds cancer cells directly. So you want to keep them at a minimum. You know, of course, you might eat it here and there, but you watch the level of inflammation to know what you can and can't do. So, yeah, and we already spoke about the function of the gut microbiome and what all it does for us. Now, I'm going to list a few things that are toxic to your microbiome. But it's interesting, they're not only toxic to your microbiome, but often they're neurotoxins, which means they kind of coat or they stop the neural firing power of your brain. So it causes all kinds of disturbances. It can cause disturbance in behavior. They're now finding, I've been doing a lot of research on mental health, and they're starting to see that often mental health issues are nutritional issues. And it's very interesting what I'm finding, that most of the ones that I've come across and researched, the nutritional components that you need are mostly the ones I take. And yeah, they really are quite helpful. But anyway, that was a little side thing there. So here are things that are toxic to your microbiome. They're toxic to your organs. They're toxic to your neurological connections. Pharmaceutical drugs, including over-the-counter, not prescriptions, but drugs, aspirin, etc. And one of the ways that they're toxic is that they're very acidic. They acidify your body, and your body has to be in a state of balance, slightly alkaline. And when it goes towards the acidic side, then it's imbalanced, and the bad bacteria, etc., start to thrive. Cancer thrives in an acidic condition. So all of the pharmaceuticals do that first off. And the other thing that happens when you're over acidic is that your body always wants to be in that balance of slightly alkaline, and then it will start to rob your body of calcium. Calcium is alkalinizing, so it'll take it from your bones, it'll take it out of your blood, it'll take it from where it can get the alkalinizing power of the calcium. So you have to watch that with those things. And the pharmaceutical drugs are just a cover-up. It's like a Band-Aid for a big wound. You want to try to find what the cause of your illness is. And I'll speak about that just a minute. But the other thing, very toxic to you, are pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. They don't only kill bugs. They don't only kill weeds. They don't only kill molds. They kill what's in you, too. And I can't believe they didn't really figure that out. And, you know, they are so blatant about it that it was a herbicide called 2,4-D used during the Vietnam War. They defoliated Vietnam. They dropped it on people. They dropped it on our soldiers, called Agent 4. Made them very, very, very sick. They now use it on our crops. They convinced the FDA that it's not bad for you. They're crazy. Processed food is toxic to your microbiome. It's toxic to your brain as well. Synthetic food additives, there's a whole industry around synthetic food additives, and I learned about that from a local writer whose child was seriously ill, had terrible allergies, so she started looking into why he had terrible allergies and illness, and it all had to do with the additives that they put in food. They make it so you want to eat more. MSG is one of the worst. And now they don't label things anymore with MSG. They call it something else. But, as I said last week, if you look at a label and you can't tell what it is, if it doesn't say apple, orange, the things that you know, you shouldn't be eating it. and more than likely it will be MSG in disguise. They're very tricky about it. Vaccinations are toxic to your microbiome. They're also toxic to your neurology, your brain. And there's a talk from last year on the blog site about vaccinations. It's a very thorough talk. I really did a lot of research last year because things have changed since my children, who are now adults, were children. And I wanted to find out, what was going on. And basically, if you knew, which you can find out in that talk, what they put in vaccinations, you would not get them. They're extremely toxic, and they do it deliberately. They put mercury in it. Why do they put mercury in it? Because they create, like, say, measles. And they create a weak version of measles, and your body will just evacuate it. Get out of here. You're just a weak measles. But so it will stay in your body. They attach it to mercury because the heavy metals, and so mercury is not the only one, aluminum and others, will stay in your body. Your body doesn't easily get rid of heavy metals. Heavy metals is toxic to your microbiome and to your neurological system. So anyway, that's just a little bit on that. Farm-raised fish, because they feed it GMO food. GMO food is worse than you could ever think. Everything they've told you about it is a lie. If you look at the real research, which they hide, and the FDA has Monsanto people, which is now Bayer, working for them and perverting the science and keeping it down and having people rewrite the research, you would know that GMO foods are extremely toxic. If an animal is given a choice whether to eat GMO food or not, it will not eat it. And I'll tell you the little bit I know about it because I'm a farm advocate, and that comes because I've come from farmers and have always had a great interest in it and how the earth is treated. And so I started researching agriculture in the United States in my 20s, and I've continued all along. So when GMO first started being talked about, I read an article by a very wonderful scientist who says that what they do in GMO is they insert viruses to interrupt the DNA, and then they insert very odd viruses. Like they'll put a pig snout into an apricot thing, for instance. You think that sounds weird. It is that weird. And they have, God knows what their intentions are, but that's what they do. And then they have to spray heavy amounts of herbicides to kill the weeds that grow around it because the soil is so poor and the weeds are there to rejuvenate the soil. So they have to just spray the heck out of it with Roundup, which is glyphosate. And glyphosate, I remember when it came out, it's only toxic for seconds and then it just biodegrades and it won't hurt you. Wrong. It's just coming out over and over again how harmful it is. So don't eat farm-raised fish. Sorry, I ramble sometimes. And then chemicals in body and cleaning products can be the worst because in the United States, they don't have to tell you what is in body products nor in cleaning products. And they definitely put the toxic products in there. Many of them are outlawed in Europe, and many of these products are manufactured in China, and they will manufacture that, Dove whatever for Europe without the toxins, and for us with the toxins. And it makes you wonder why, but I think probably more than anything, as much as anything, it's the economical way to do it. It's a cheap way to get rid of byproducts mainly from the oil industry. A lot of chemicals come from the oil industry. The whole of agriculture, the mainstream agriculture, is the byproduct of the war industry. The nitrogen comes from making bombs. The herbicides comes from what they use to kill the stuff to get rid of things in Vietnam. killing insects. All of these things were used in war, and they're the byproducts that they use from chemical processes like making aluminum and so on, and they just try to figure out how to use it because it just piles up, and it's a way to double down on their money. So you should be using the most pure body products and the most pure cleaning products you can, especially with children, because they're way more susceptible, and knowing full well that your skin absorbs everything almost immediately. And so whatever you put on there is going straight in. And then engineered fats like hydrogenated oil, cottonseed oil, rapeseed oil, which by the way is canola oil, which is a lot genetically modified. And cheap and poorly produced oils also are poison and toxic, and soy oil. So those are some of the toxins. You know, unfortunately, our environment is just loaded with toxins. So it behooves us to take care of our microbiome and to eat in the healthiest fashion we can. Now, I want to stop and go back a little bit about this whole talk from the perspective of Steiner. And Steiner spoke about nutrition from what he called the earthly nutrition and the cosmic nutrition. And I'll do a talk about cosmic nutrition down the line, and you could actually find one on the blog. But the earthly nutrition is food substance. It's everything we take from the earth. And yeah, so when you think of it that way, think of the earth. The earth is one big mineral, right? With a lot of living substance in it. But it has a lot of minerals. And the earth, with the process of all the little microbiome in the earth and the plants and the roots and the bird poop, etc., helps to make it so that the plant can uptake the mineral, and the plants will turn the minerals both into mineral and vitamins for you. But in the basic analysis of it, we're all mineral. When we leave our body behind, we're leaving the mineral substance behind. So most illnesses you can look at and find out what minerals are depleted or we're poor in. And these are the basic ones. And I talk about them a lot in class and try to give you lists of them. And I've been talking quite a bit about some of them because we're depleted. Most of us are depleted in it. And that first one is magnesium. And you really need magnesium and calcium in balance, but many people have enough calcium but not enough magnesium because the soils have very little magnesium. And magnesium, I will give you the charts, but magnesium is basically a painkiller and a calmer. It is one of the best minerals for mental illness. It's one of the best minerals, for instance, for anxiety and for OCD and that type of thing. It just calms you. And I've been telling people about the product called Calm, which is basically magnesium. And they make it with calcium in it too, if you feel that you need calcium. And you determine how, what minerals you need by going online with these doctors. And they'll tell you the lists of the minerals. And they will tell you what signs are there when you're deficient in these specific minerals. So anyway, Calm is a very good one for taking magnesium. And some people have to watch it because they can't take much magnesium. It gives them diarrhea. So, as I said to someone today, whenever you take something new, whether it's food, a supplement, whatever, always start small and see how your body reacts to it. Don't take it for granted. You have to experiment a little and see, is this good for me or not? But I do know magnesium is really good for painkiller, and it's good for teething. And then zinc is another one, and I can't remember enough to tell you about what it does, but they're amazing. And some of these are trace minerals. Zinc and selenium are trace minerals. Selenium helps your thyroid, and it helps with immunity. The B vitamins are very important for your nerves to help settle your nervous system, which is connected to pain and to calmness and so on. And as I said earlier, B vitamins are depleted a lot through stress and anxiety. C vitamins. When you're overexposed to sun, for instance, or toxic things, C vitamins will wash the toxins out of you. And they, you can't really take too much C vitamin because it will flush through you. Now, some of the vitamins are fat soluble and other vitamins are water soluble. Vitamin C is a water soluble one. And let's see if I can recall. I know vitamin D, vitamin K, which you need to have together. There's others, I don't remember them right now, but they're fat soluble, which means you have to have fats. So we live in the age when they say, don't eat fats. Wrong. Your body, your brain's like 98% fat, for instance. And vitamin D you get from the sun, or the sun gives your body the properties that will help produce vitamin D, but you can also take it, it's in eggs. That's why I love my farm-raised eggs. They're so rich in so many minerals and vitamins. And the omega-3s and the omega-6s, which are fatty acids, and you have to have them in balance. And those generally you get from fish oils, although there is a vegetarian one, which is flax, borage, and forget the other, starts with a P. Anyway, you can find these at at Vitamin Cottage here in Boulder, and they'll help you find them. And if you ask me, I'll show you mine, and then we can look at that. And then the best way to get really lots of vitamins and minerals and what are called antioxidants, which means that it fights off what are called free radicals in your system, which build up the inflammation, are mainly vegetables and some fruits. And they also have enzymes which help you to digest foods. So fruits and vegetables. And in fact, let me see if I have that chart. When you eat, there's a kind of a ratio of what to eat to optimize your microbes and your microbiome and your flora. And that is 50% vegetable, meaning fruits and vegetables, but mainly vegetables, 25% protein, and 25% whole grain carbs. As I've always said, please aim for organic and biodynamic because you really have no idea how toxic the foods are. I belong to an organization that prints out what sprays are put on specific fruits and vegetables. And when you look at the list and they tell you what that toxin does to you, you want to eat organic and biodynamic. Now, they have that list of, I think it's 15 or so vegetables and fruits that have less of the toxins. But the way I think about it is we want a healthy earth. And it's not that you can't grow things that way. It's that they're not willing to do what it takes to grow them that way. And I understand being a farmer is a hard job. It's not easy to make money as a farmer, so they have a lot of considerations. But I do believe you can grow healthy food and make a living. Now, yeah, that's a topic I could go off on, but I won't. So, yeah, and eat healthy fats. I spoke about the unhealthy ones. Healthy meaning coconut, olive oil, flaxseed are the main ones. You can eat a little bit of the nut ones, and then, as I said, I do safflower oil a little bit because it doesn't have a strong flavor when I don't want the strong flavor to come through, but very little of that. It's mainly coconut, olive, and flax. Butter from pasture-raised animals, or ghee, which has the healthy properties of butter, are there more, and they really are. It's detoxifying. Ghee is, and it has very many healthy properties that John Douillard can tell you about. And you should be eating fermented foods at least every day. Sally Fallon in Nourishing Tradition says you should be eating them at every meal, which is what the ancients did. And part of the reason they did that is fermenting food helps to preserve it. And the interesting thing about a lot of fermented foods is that the fermentation actually comes from the air or the soil. For instance, sourdough made in San Francisco. The reason it's so loved is because the microbiome in the air in San Francisco have a special quality because of the nature of their climate and what grows there, etc. And they just put the flowers out and let it collect it, and then you start using that over and over so it doesn't take as long. But I did at one point know a baker in San Francisco that it didn't matter what kind of flour, wheat flour he used, even if it was not organic, that did not make people with gluten sensitivity. It didn't bother them. So sourdough breads are a wonderful source of fermentation. And yogurts, kefirs, sauerkraut, and all the pickles, not the vinegar ones, although the vinegar ones are good for you too, because vinegar helps to boost your digestion. But I'm talking about the ones that are fermented with live ferments. Sour cream, kombucha, miso, and soy sauce. And miso has a really special quality I just learned about, and that is that after World War II, when people were in the hospitals in Japan, the hospital where they fed them miso, everyone survived from the radiation exposure, where many died in the hospital where they didn't, because miso helps your body to create vitamin B, and it makes the radiation toxicity move right through you. And we all have a little radiation toxicity. Believe you me, it isn't just Fukushima, it's all the nuclear power plants do put minute amounts of plutonium, etc. into the air, so you want to be flushing that. So miso is a really, really good food. Just be sure not to overheat it, because then you kill the ferment. And then the soy sauce, when I cook for my family and I don't have to worry about gluten sensitivity, I use the one that has the fermented. It is fermented. So those are just a few. And you know, there are other sources of fermented food. I remember reading about how they ferment fish, and you can eat raw fish that's been fermented, for instance. And I'm sure the different cultures have kimchi, for instance, in Korea and so on. So, yeah, and, what do you call that? Not tofu, but the, you know, that other one. Anyway, the fermented soy. And then you can take probiotic supplements. I never really have, mainly because I've healed myself repeatedly using yogurt. When I learned how to make it, I just ate it by the gobs, and I know I healed myself of candida by literally a gallon or two of yogurt a day. But some people do benefit from probiotics. You have to watch what properties are in it, and now they're starting to label them more carefully, like this one will help, you know, this part and so on. And then veggie juice is good, not in great amounts, and fruit blends, like fruit smoothies, and I say not in huge amounts because of what I told you about fibers and the importance of fibers, because when you break them down through juicing or blending, you break them down so fine that they won't function as a fiber should. But it is detoxifying to use vegetable juices and fruit smoothies. And raw dairy is good if you can find a good source of raw dairy. Pasteurization isn't the worst thing, but it kills the enzymes that helps you to digest that. And what's really bad is the homogenization, because it makes the fat in the dairy so tiny that it will enter your bloodstream before it's been broken down in your liver. So raw dairy, but also from pasture-raised cows. Why is that? Because a pasture-raised cow is eating grass, and grass has lots of omega-3s, omega-6s. It's amazing. Like, I learned this year that dairy has iodine. Like, what in the world? I thought it was hard to get iodine in Colorado because iodine mainly comes from the ocean. No, it's in raw dairy. Like, how do those animals do that? I don't quite know, other than, you know, Colorado was under an ocean at one point, so maybe it's that. I don't know, but what I do know is that the plants have properties that help the cows. And cows in confinement are fed a lot of corn and really gross things you don't want to know about. And the corn is mainly genetically modified. And by the way, that's one of the challenges with vaccinations, because they make the vaccinations on animals and put animal things in it that are genetically modified animals. So anyway, raw dairy from pasture-raised animals, and eggs from free range, if you can get a hold of them. And any of you who've tasted my eggs know there is no comparison between a pasture of free-range chicken and one in confinement. And I was going to show you guys that list today, but we got too busy felting. But I will be showing you the list of this organization that evaluates dairy and lets you know who's really raising the organic and who's really not, or who has substandard standards. And I'll clue you in, all the big places, like even Kirkland, which is sad, Safeways, all the big ones, Walmart, Target, obviously, have substandard organic products. So, but I'll get that list out to you next time. Yeah. There are many other components of health, but that's what I wanted to focus on tonight. But I will say that part of what brings health is your lifestyle. And it's not only what you eat, it's your practices, having good sleep habits, drinking plenty of water, which I'm going to do right now. And meditation, contemplation, exercise, all those things play a really big part. Plenty of time in nature and health. It isn't just what you eat, but what you eat is the earthly part of what will help you stay healthy. So that's all I have to say, and we'll look and see if anyone has questions before I close. And I love taking questions because it just makes me think more. So, still waiting to see. Yeah, as Pad pointed out, at least they're bringing the concept of organics to the public, those big companies like Walmart and so on. And that's good. That, as I'm telling you, I've told people this, everything I've fought for, everything I've believed in was illegal when I was younger. And organics was thought as some stupid hippie fad, by the way. So it's made a lot of progress, right? Yeah. Hi, Trailing. So, any questions out there? I don't see any coming. What do you suggest to prevent allergies with children? Oh, that's such an excellent question. First of all, what I think, this came as inspiration to me because when I first started teaching, I don't think anyone said they had an allergy. That was in 1989, officially at Shining Mountain. No, sorry, 84. And what I think is that because children have been in the spiritual world more recently than we have, they're actually more enlightened and they need more spiritually raised food. And so when they come down here, I know as a youngster, I was shocked about what I came into. I was looking for wisdom and it was hard to find. And I think our children are like that. And so when they're given foods that are toxic, and what does toxic mean? It means that the people who raised it were greedy, selfish, and selfish, and inconsiderate, and so on. Nothing positive. It wasn't grown with love. And so that's really spiritually behind it what makes them sick. So I think the allergies are a way that children awaken people to the world around them and to having a healthier lifestyle, basically, life practices. And that's what I've always said about raising young children. The things that you do at first, you know, you might feel in the beginning like, oh, I have to do this, and this is hard on me because I'd rather go out and do this or whatever. But what you find out in the long run is they're healthy life practices, and you get healthier by doing them for the children. And so ways to avoid them. When you introduce food, like I said, one at a time, the highest quality food you can get your hands on, and you don't have to buy it. Occasionally maybe you need to, but you can just mush it. You know, cooking helps, is a pre-digestion, so obviously steaming the sweet potato, and then watching your child. And the signal that a child is ready for food is the teeth coming in. And what those little teeth coming in tell you is that the microbiome of the body, of the child's body, is changing, that they're starting to produce the digestive enzymes. And you have to be careful not nursing too long, because you can suppress the development of these microbiome and the enzymes that they need for digesting other things in the world. So introducing foods carefully and watching, and you know, they say that there are some children that they have to, something new they have to have a certain number of times, 10 times or whatever, before they will eat it. But my perspective is that what really interferes with children wanting to have a healthy diet is processed food, because it fools your body. Processed food has those additives. They fool your body. They make your body think it's eating this and it's healthy for it, when in fact it's a lie. So that's the little bit I have to say. And then, you know, helping children learn how to read and have a healthy life, or not read, sleep, and have healthy life practices. Yeah, and it's an individual question, because there's not one pat answer, so you have to look at the child, but that's a basic way of looking at it. Yeah, and then a lot of children are given a lot of processed food, chicken nuggets, and you know, pizza is a lot of carbs. There are healthier pizzas now. They have these great recipes with cauliflower, and they have the almond flour pizzas, or pizzas with less gluten. You have to be careful of gluten-free foods, because gluten-free foods have lots of carbs, you know, the tapioca flours and the potato starches and so on, that aren't necessarily healthy. And I think they've found that some not so positive effects from gluten-free foods. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. Yeah. Cheers to you. Cheers with my sparkling well water. Yeah. Yeah, and try to keep the processed foods away from the really young children. It really interferes with their instinct and their intuition for what's good for them. And I think it's important to have children sit at the table as soon as they can sit. And, you know, maybe they can't sit as long as you do, but they can also do something in their high chairs. You know, I had my children play with lettuce and cut bananas or whatever, you know, so that they come to know that that's a ritual time, a time when you break bread together and you're thankful for it. And also, that's the other thing to know about epigenetics, is that gratitude, awe, wonder, and love are the most healthy feelings you can have for your body. They have proven it over and over again. And it's so interesting, because that's what Steiner said. You needed to create circumstances for young children where they felt awe, wonder, and gratitude and love. And that's what all those sweet little verses and songs are for, to help them have that feeling. In our time, it's not necessarily, doesn't come necessarily, I think when, in times past it did, but now it's about consumerism and wanting and grabbing and taking, rather than feeling gratitude for what's given to you, and feeling the awe of, oh, this plum came off that tree, and my God, we saw an orange plum the other day. That was awesome. Yeah, the question is it a chicken and egg situation of illness and spiritual absence and nutritional issues? Yeah, it's all one. You know, it's hard to separate them out because what Steiner said about the spirit world is we like to think about here's the material world and the spiritual world is off there somewhere. And he said, wrong. It's here. It's everywhere. It's interpenetrating. It's multiple realities all interpenetrating. So you can't really separate out the spiritual. Our science tries to do that, and that's why they're so inaccurate, because they don't take into consideration the holistic picture of the other dimensions that are interpenetrating. And that's the point, I believe, in nutrition, is becoming healthy enough, light-filled enough, that we will be able to see these other realities. That's what Steiner was teaching us how to do. And nutrition, he said, was a big part of it. In fact, he, for World War I, they got him together with politicians and heads of state and so on, and he introduced what was called the threefold social order. And that was a way of thinking to bring peace to the world. Well, of course they rejected it. Why? Because they were interested in money, period, and resources, as they are today. And so after that, all the people around him, including a great industrialist named, oh gosh, his name just slipped my mind, but he had the Waldorf Astoria factory. And they asked him, why did they reject these ideas that could have brought peace to the earth? And he said it's because of their nutrition. If you don't have good nutrition, it's very hard to think spiritually and in an evolved manner. So they're interpenetrated. It's not one or the other. Thank you. That was a great question. They're all great. As my mentor taught me, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And there's no such thing as a mistake being bad. It's all a learning situation. So please don't feel like your questions are dumb. Anything else coming up? What time is it? Oh, it's 8:32. Time for me to say goodbye. Don't want to keep you up. You know, you need to be getting your rest and do your meditation and your little contemplation right now and just chill. Love you guys. Bye-bye.